Warning: the following program may contain material not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
They say for every light in this world, there is a shadow waiting to reclaim it. We've been told what to believe, what to fear, and exactly where the boundaries of real end. But tonight, we're crossing those lines. From the whispers in the attic to the lights in the desert sky, and the entities that walk among us, we are stepping behind the veil. Transmitting from deep within the mountains of West Virginia, it's time to seek the truth. This is Let's Find Out with Diego. And now, here is your host, Diego the Podcaster.
On this episode of Let's Find Out, we're venturing to the heart of a region where the line between history and hauntings is thinner than a mountain mist. Our guest is an author, paranormal investigator, filmmaker, and a dedicated researcher who looks for the truth in the dark corners of coal mines and the whispers of local folklore. He bridges the gap between the documented past and the unexplained present. All this plus more. Please welcome our new friend and first-time guest, paranormal investigator, author, and filmmaker, Toni Felosi. Toni, my friend, welcome to Let's Find Out.
Thank you for having me today.
Oh, absolutely, man, because we definitely have a friend in common in Thomas Markham, the man and the brains behind Zombie Media, and he says, I got a really good guy for you. I think you'll enjoy having on the show. He told me about just like, please bring him my way. And here we are today.
Yes,
And
Tom's a great guy. He's very, very talented man.
yes, and every once in a while I can harass him enough to get him on the show, but it's very difficult because he's a very busy man.
Very, very busy.
And I know that, correct me if I'm wrong, because I have a hard time keeping up with him. But are you both working on something right now, a film or?
Yeah, he's working on I think he got the one paranormal one out. He's doing a Bigfoot one that we did about a year and a half ago, and it's going to be a good one. It's about a family that is being having a lot of activity. I don't want to say harassed, but they get a lot of the Bigfoot peeking in the windows and tapping and things like that. And we heard some crazy sounds, and that is probably, and we really paid for that one. Tom and I both we were spent a lot of time in a field listening out into the wood line, and we were eaten alive by chiggers. And it took us, they destroyed us. And it took us like a month or so. I mean, that we paid for that one. We
No, you're both very brave going out there because one would say, well, the worst thing that could happen is you get attacked by an animal, or some people would say encountering Bigfoot would frighten them. That's the least of your problems. Yeah, you have other things in the woods that are really going to make for a very difficult time because you have out there you have ticks, you have mosquitoes.
Yep.
You
Oh,
have
the whole bit, yeah. And you're trying to focus and concentrate and all that. But that's part of the gig. But this was like probably the worst event we did either one of us had ever had with like an insect. But yeah, it's comical kind of now, but it dang sure wasn't comical then. But yeah, he's working on that one. He should have it out, I would say, or done maybe in a couple weeks or so.
And it's a perfect timing. And I'm gonna go off script here because you brought up Bigfoot.
Yes.
Yeah, because even my mother now sends me texts because she listens to the show. She goes, "Have you heard about this?" She sent me this article, and not long ago there was a massive explosion in Bigfoot sightings. I think it was in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I think something was going on. I don't know if you've heard about it or not, but
No.
we seem to be getting to the times where sightings of Bigfoot are becoming more and more common. Not saying to the everyday person, but you're seeing more reports of sightings. So in your opinion, what do you think attributes to that now that we're more active in Bigfoot activity?
I think that some of it is seasonal. I don't know whether they migrate or not, but I know that around here, from the last of February on into May, you'll have a lot of sightings, and then starting in late fallish or early fall, like maybe around the middle of October to on into November, you'll have a lot of sightings. And then through the year, you'll have it's spotty, but it seems like those two times that we have, probably 3 or 4 times the amount of normal.
Now, is it because the food source is more available at that point?
I don't know. Well, definitely in the summer or spring, everything's blooming out and stuff like that. And I think that, and it's more of a Tom question, but I can speak fairly intelligently about it. But you have things blooming out. You have all these flowers. You have you have the deer. You have the turkey. You have the cover. You have old mines here. You have caves. You have. I mean, it's a. If I were Bigfoot, I would. I would try to live here because you have it all. You have water, food, shelter. Why would something that's that large not stay here? But now, one of the things that Tom and I looked at, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, was like, people will say, well, the mountains don't have enough food to um, sustain, a large Bigfoot population, or very few Bigfoot. But we looked at the mountain gorillas and what they eat and their metabolism and things like that. So that's what we've come to believe, is that they have obviously a different metabolic rate, which allows them to flourish. It's because the mountain gorillas just predominantly eat, they're vegetarians. you know so look how big they get. So why couldn't Bigfoot, with everything we have here, and and all the other places that they're saying, uh why couldn't they survive? They don't. We know that they hunt deer. We know they that they're omnivores. But yeah, I mean, you have it. You have a whole lot here, and I would say that they may follow the blooms, or everything budding out. Maybe there's something there that they like, but uh, like I said, we have predominantly the most sightings in mid fall to up into around the middle of November, and then starting again around February, end of February.
And how long were you both out there to document this part, or this film is documented coming out? How long were you guys out there?
We were out there. Tom was over there a day or two more than I was. I was out there for probably a day and a half. We were there like all day, all night, you know, interviewing and in the woods. Now, something that we did see that was unusual there is, I saw a UFO, and it's right toward the end of the investigation. Well, it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we went down in the woods and made a loop where we'd set up some cameras. And just pretty as you please, I look up, and there's this object it's just sitting there, just hovering. It's a ridge or so over, and then we look at it, and I think I blinked a flashlight at it, and it does this. It goes down behind the ridge line.
That's
We didn't
very
catch it on camera, yeah, but
yeah,
I wish we could have caught that. That was pretty cool.
that is amazing on itself. I was just talking to somebody the other week, another Bigfoot researcher.
Hmm.
He's been doing this for many years. Not as much with the UFO connection, but he's a lot of majority, not a majority of the time, but frequently he's gone out there in the woods doing the research and investigations. Not much UFO, but mostly with orbs. And I don't know. I'm not one educated enough, but in my opinion, from what I've understand these last few years, I don't think there's much of a UFO Bigfoot connection. But this seems an awful lot of coincidental now that, maybe there is a connection.
I'm not. I'm open to anything. Um, Tom is more uh, non-portal, all flesh and blood. I'm kind of on the fence about it. But I can tell you that uh, I've heard a lot of people talk about orbs in the woods now. Or as far as the paranormal investigator part of me does not. I believe there are orbs, which is just energy. But I think that 98% of the orbs is caught are either dust or raindrops or this or that. Um, and an orb will put off its own light source, and I mean, it looks totally different. It looks more like plasma. I mean, they'll do this. And I actually have some film of some orbs. I've been doing this 15, 16 years, and I might have seen half a dozen real orbs, and there may be somebody out there that has seen a lot more without a doubt, but I'm not much of an orb guy as far as the paranormal part. But now in the woods, that stuff is hard to explain. When you're seeing an orb with your naked eye, not getting a photo of it, and then somebody just bumps something, dust is all over the freaking room. That's hard to explain away. We have interviewed several people. Now we can go down the woo rabbit hole with. You can get into elementals, you can get into this, you can get into that, you can get into different types of energy. Um, what? But it's very hard to explain away out in out in the woods when people are seeing these things.
And these are sizable orbs because I understand what you're talking about. I've seen videos where, of course, light bounces off of dust, or you'll see
Right.
might be bugs by the lens
Exactly.
and things like that. But
The dew falling. That's a big one too. When the dew is falling, I was like, it's the whole graveyard coming at us. Watch out. It's,
I'd be running too if that's what I've saw. But
yeah.
but these are sizable, like spheres, right? Is it kind of like the size of a fist or a bowling ball, like a mini pin, like a small bowling ball? Those little, what do they call
Mhm.
those? Those little ones you throw out there, pinballs or
Yeah, like
whatever they're
golf
called.
balls or ping pong
Yeah,
balls.
yeah.
Now, most of the time that I've interviewed them, it's been something the size of pinball or ping pong balls. But
Mm,
oddly enough, they said they put off a buzzing noise.
interesting.
Uh,
Yeah.
and the gentleman just died, but we have, I don't know, 2 or 3 interviews. Darla and I had some. I think maybe Thomas and I had one that in this same stretch of woods. These a lot of these guys were either squirrel hunters or ginsenggers or outdoorsmen, and and it didn't happen regularly, but there was probably a half a dozen people that saw the exact same thing. It's told the exact same story in that same section of woods, and it was like little orbs, about the size of a ping pong ball, and they would chase them. I mean, not hurt them, but buzz them until they left. And whenever they got past a certain point, leaving, they would just disappear.
Kind of like bees. They circle you
Yeah.
sometimes, and you run around and they leave you alone after they made
Hmm.
their point. Get out of here. But no,
Right. Right.
I would definitely walk away with something buzzing by me. I get the hint. It's time
Hmm.
for me to go for sure. Now, I'm gonna go back to the very beginning
Hmm.
because something got you on this journey. I mean, you're an author, you're a
Hmm.
filmmaker, paranormal investigator. If you get inside your DeLorean in your mind, go back, you're going 88 miles per hour. We're gonna go back a few years. What's your earliest memory of what you had any type of experience, whether it's a cryptid, paranormal, or UFO?
Well, and I don't talk about it a lot on shows, but whenever I was a child, I would have these crazy and this was in the 70s. Whenever early 70s, when there was a rash of UFO sightings around the United States, especially down south. And I started having these real vivid dreams about grays coming in and the light, the whole bit. And then you wake up, you think it's a nightmare. And I had those like 3 or 4 times. Very, very vivid. And see, at that time, there wasn't a lot out there. I'm like probably 11 years old, maybe 10, 11. There wasn't anything much out there on grays or the UFO stuff, and just UFO sightings. So there was nothing. Because I think back and go, well, maybe I read something, maybe I done this, maybe, but there wasn't a whole lot out there on that, and that always made me curious about the UFO stuff. And then whenever I was 18, um, well, maybe when I was 14, we were having there was 3 or 4 of us, and we were having just a kiddie seance. Uh, and to kids out there, if you're watching, don't do that. We didn't know any better. And so we were just all nerds. We were trying to contact George Washington Carver. Be the guy. I swear to God, we were nerds, man. And so just as and it could have been the paper, but there wasn't a lot of heat from it, and it was a candle. So when we were doing that, we tossed a little piece of paper in the candle. When the candle burned the paper, the glass shattered. So it didn't have enough time to create that much heat. I mean, it just gone and boom. So that was very interesting. And then when I was 18, 19, about 19, I woke up, and in my father's house, it was allegedly haunted. And, I was on the fence. I know I'd seen things and stuff, and maybe, maybe not, maybe. And I woke up, and there was this mist over top of me, just like a very odd looking mist. It wasn't like fog. It was more like plasma-ish looking. And so I wouldn't have been the guy that screamed like a little girl and tried to kick it away, but somebody did in there. I don't know who it was, but after that happened, it just kind of it just dissipated, and got smaller, dissipated, and gone. So I knew there was something there. And then we had an experience, and I didn't. My grandfather and some other folks used to fish on a lake called Norris Lake. It's in Tennessee, to the south of us, and they kept talking about Bigfoot. Can't fish for Bigfoot. Can't do this. If you don't want you around, he'll throw rocks. I had never studied Bigfoot. Didn't believe in Bigfoot. I knew there was ghosts because I'd seen something. Okay, but now Bigfoot, no way. Because I hunted all the time. You've heard the story. I've been in the woods. I've done this. I've never seen nothing. All that number. And then we were camping, and this creature, we tried to write it off as a bear at first because it was moving around, heavy footsteps just outside of the firelight, and you've heard the stories. And then the tree started shaking, and then you heard snap. And so we're trying to, or I am, Dad saying, it's Bigfoot, man. It's okay. It's Bigfoot. So it's good. I'm like, if it's Bigfoot, it's not good. And because we're like way up the lake, man, so you hear the limbs snapping and the footsteps and all that number. So we tried to write it off or I did try to bear or something of that nature. And there wasn't that many bears back then, not in this area. So the next night, same thing started happening. Then it stopped. Then we we got in our tent, and about, I don't know, about 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, there's this guttural growl scream, maybe 30 feet from the back of the tent. and it's if you ever stood next to a speaker with the music turned up and you're vibrating, it feels like it vibrates your insides. That's what it did, and it we didn't sleep very well the rest of the night, and it's just like you got hit with infrasound or something, along with the scream. So the next day when it got daylight, we just loaded up and left. You know, and and then years later, I started reading the Bigfoot encounters and what other people. I said, well, maybe that could have been. Then when I met Tom, started working with Tom. See, in this business, you're you work with you meet a lot of people. Some of them tell you stories that are are factual. And then some people maybe not so much. So I'm always very careful. And so, but I met Tom, got to know him. I knew that, and I started explaining it. Tom's legit 100%. So I said, hey, man, this went on, this one. He says, well, you had a Bigfoot encounter, you know. And I was telling him about and so I went, wow. So that's and I've seen the footprints and the tree, heard the tree knocks. I mean, I've not seen a Bigfoot, but I've seen the vocalizations, the tree knocks, the footprints, the tree shaking, and you look up 10 foot up a tree, and they'll have the branches and what get not only are they broken, they're twisted. Those are the ones that really you can kind of maybe something fell and hit it, or a giant squirrel or raccoon had jumped and broke it, or some crap like that. But then whenever it's broken and it's twisted, you're going, man, that's hard to explain.
I've seen something similar like that I went to a convention several years ago. I met a gentleman who had a tree trunk, but this trunk, talking about twisting the branches
Mhm.
with the limbs you're talking about, the whole thing was twisted several dozen times. It's something that a machine or a man could not replicate. We can tell it wasn't a machine because you can tell when a machine does something when it cuts.
Right, the
It's
marks are
very,
so
yeah.
marked.
There's the marks are very noticeable, but this looks
Mhm.
like it was done with superhuman strength. And I'm like, this is the first artifact I ever seen that Bigfoot related. Now in that area, and if you don't want to tell me where it was, just find out. Unless you told me at the beginning of your story, where in Kentucky was this?
The paranormal part or the Bigfoot part?
The Bigfoot part.
That was in Tennessee.
Oh,
That
Tennessee. Sorry.
North Lake. Yeah, we fished a lot. We had a little cabin over there, and we fished a lot and things like that. We would take the pontoon out and camp and fish off it and things like that. So that was in Tennessee. And I can tell you the holiday. It was this place called Greasy Hollow. It would be, and the dock we came out of was Blue Springs. I don't remember if that's a Powell or Clint side. I believe it's the Powell side, maybe, because you got two rivers coming in. It's a TVA chain of lake, that they made for to produce power. So that was the Bigfoot thing. That was that initial one, and then most everything else has been in Kentucky in Harlan County or adjoining counties.
And the name Harlan County keeps popping up every once in a while for me. Like I said, I had an interview with another person not long ago, and Harlan, very interesting.
Hmm.
When I lived in Ohio, I had friends that were from Harlan, and they never really spoke too much about things. Back then, you don't really say too many things, but now it seems to be. I've been hearing these stories more and more, especially about Harlan. Now, let's go back a little bit also more because your investigations, you're not only looking for cryptids, but we're looking more into paranormal as well. And
Hmm.
I don't know which line this falls. It might be one, might be both, might be everything, might even be UFOs. Your journey took you or has taken you to many locations. One that I'm very interested in.
Hmm.
One is definitely that became a book called Black Mountain Triangle.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
Darla. Yes. Hmm.
And for those that are unfamiliar with that area, can you tell us a little bit about it, and what specific stretch in Kentucky is this at?
Well, I'm not looking at the map here in front of me, but it'll kind of go um, down into Virginia a little bit, out towards Somerset, and the point ends up around Somerset, Kentucky. It's more of an oblong. It's not necessarily a triangle like this. It's more of a right angle triangle. But it's the but it ends up in Somerset, and we think that the reason we have so much paranormal um, activity and UFO activity and Bigfoot activity is number one, the geology, a lot of limestone quartz caves and things like that. You have limestone quartz. Quartz puts off a piezo or piezoelectric charge. Okay. And then you have the water running under it, the underground rivers and things. And so there you have more energy, charging the stones. And then the kicker is on it. And did you know NASA did a study called the Kentucky Anomaly in the 70s about the magnetism here? And I can send you a PDF if you like.
Yeah,
Um,
please.
and basically, I had a gentleman look at it that was way smarter than I, and because it had a lot of math in it. And he says basically they're trying to tell you there's something going on, but they don't know what it is. And now we can get into tides and we can get into gravity, we can get into things like that, because in order for this to happen, we have to look at. You ever heard of a guy named Michio Kaku, he's a theoretical physicist? If you haven't, check him out. Him and Art Bell had some very interesting discussions in the 90s and early 2000s. He has a string theory and a superstring theory. So, I do, and I don't take AI's word as gospel or nothing like that, but I will bounce things around with AI and go, is this possible? Is this possible? What did let's talk about gravity. So basically AI, we looked at all of the, um, assets, so to speak, the geology and the quartz and the caves and the underground rivers, and that goes, and trying to explain the high electromagnetism. And he goes, well, this does not tie, and I ask about the, does this tie in any way to Kaku's string theory? And it's no, but it does dovetail into superstring theory, which is you have different, um, parallel universes and things like that. So now we're getting pretty deep down the rabbit hole. So now let's get into gravity. Now, for all this to work, we have to have some sort of mechanical type movement, mechanical energy for it to work, right? Now, where do we get the mechanical energy? Gravity. Okay, you have, that's what raises your tides is the gravity. So whenever you have a high tide, the Earth actually flexes oblongs just slightly, and then it's the Earth is continually doing this, continually. Okay. Also, did you know that Earth has a frequency? What is it, 8.73 or something like that, on up to 30 hertz or something? So, we have sound and vibration, we have gravity, we have all this other stuff going on. So that is producing energy that something absolutely can use.
Mentioning that in this location, because we have all the I'll say natural resources available
Hmm.
for it to, I guess, naturally conjure up events of some sorts, right? You never know,
Hmm.
or anomalies. You mentioned NASA,
Hmm.
which naturally brings me to this question, and I'm trying not to put too much spotlight of the words that I'm going to say, so be very careful how I tread here.
Hmm.
The I just got to pop up my computer for no reason. Sorry about that.
It's
It's not
okay.
a good time. It's not a good time to restart. No, to install anything. So what I'm gonna get to, I'm sorry about that, my friend. Has there been any stories or any sightings of perhaps things that don't belong there? And I'm not talking about monsters. I'm talking about UFOs. I'm talking about people, structures. I'm talking about perhaps there are people out there that know about these things, or maybe they're doing their own experiments to harness these things and make something happen.
Possibly because we use a an oscillator. We'll charge a room, we'll charge a building with an oscillator to try to bring that out. But yeah, there's lots of uh, the our thinking is that your sound and vibration help open up, portals, for lack of a
Mhm.
better term. You'll have time slips, things of that nature. But as far as the structures, um, y- what about we can get into giants right there. I've interviewed three people that have literally held giant skulls and jawbones in their hands. Very reputable people, not somebody looking for. And I'm in the process of trying to track down some of the children of these folks to see if they, maybe get to interview them. Also, there was a species of man in 1961 or 62. It was in the early 60s. A Dr. Golden from Pineville, Kentucky, which is south of us, I think. It's west of us. The and this guy came in and said, "Hey, Doctor Golden, well, I'll tell you what he says. I was squirrel hunting and I was sitting down in this blowdown uh, before daylight. Well, what a blowdown is, something like a fallen tree and all the branches, and so he's sitting there waiting for it to get daylight. When he got daylight, he was sitting in a pile of bones, and so he says, these look." There was no heads. There was but they look different. He says, and so Dr. Golden just says, okay. He says, if you found them up there, he says, bring them to me and I'll buy them from you. And, never thinking he'd probably see the guy again. Um, and week or so later, guy comes back, brings all these bones. Dr. Golden buys them. Now, what's unusual about this, and this is on the Pine Mountain chain, at the Appalachian Mountains are one of the oldest mountain chains in the world. I think it ends up in Scotland or someplace now, but at one time, I mean, it was like is taller than the Himalayas and all that number. But what caught Dr. Golden's eyes once he put them together is the femurs were double the size of a modern man. And on all of the skeletons, not one all of the skeletons. So you have femurs that are double the size. You have no heads, which they thought maybe could have rolled on down the mountain. Obviously it was a burial site. I don't know why they didn't go back and try to excavate it. But so he sends it to the Smithsonian to try to get help
Uh,
identifying. So guess what happens?
I'm gonna say they disappeared.
They did. I mean, isn't that just a coincidence? And he never got him again. Now his son, it's his son or his nephew is still alive, and I'm trying to contact him to see if maybe that Dr. Golden uh, had something put away or had notes. Doctors take a lot of notes. Maybe we can find the files like where he's writing down all the stuff about the skeletons, kind of like an autopsy. But I would love to get my hands on those. So,
Yeah.
but
Well, maybe not. I don't know because I'm assuming there's a certain element of danger when you discover anything. And you mentioned Smithsonian because that's the first thing that thought in my mind. Oh, they got caught wind. They're gonna go there, say, yeah, that we'll study these things, wink, wink, and then they
yeah,
went up in a warehouse somewhere
right, right.
right. So
He sent
uh,
them. He sent them to Smithsonian. He called,
yeah.
tried to get them back. I think a year later or something, and they say we don't have them. We sent them out all over the country to all these places. They're studying them right now, and we don't have. Well, where did you send them? Well, they're at various locations. So he never got them back, and he never could find where they sent them.
No, they probably did the whole no hablo inglés. trick on you, and then they say hang up the phone. So
Yeah, yeah.
your stuff got lost. Now, I also know that some of these things sometimes wind up in the black market too, right?
I would say.
Yeah.
Uh, but now, we've had giant, back to this area, you have a lot of the magnetic anomalies on the Pine Mountain. And one of the reasons I think there's so many discoveries made is the Pine Mountain isn't suitable for coal mining. It lays differently. The plates, everything, the rock structures lay differently. Geology is different, and they couldn't mine it. So, without a doubt, we've lost tons and tons and tons of things that they just pushed over and buried, because if they had reported them, they would have had to shut their jobs down. So that's not going to happen. So I would say we've lost a lot, but yeah, that's the Pine. You have a lot of UFO activity. You have Bigfoot activity. You have paranormal activity. Now, you can get into, I mean, shapeshifters. I mean, I know that's. Have you ever have you dealt with or heard of the gentleman from Haunted Discoveries? Um, Brown Alves, Mustafa Gadalori, and those folks, Kevin Oddie.
I'm so bad with names sometimes. I'm sure that I'm gonna run across that information somewhere, but
Ch-
doesn't sound familiar at this point.
check them out. Check them out. They're great guys, and they came in and done a few episodes here in Harlan. And one of the things that they caught, and it's on film, and I don't think I don't think they aired the whole clip, because I saw the whole clip on the show, but they so this is a shape shifting woo woo story that I was there. Now, we didn't see this, but I'm like, Kevin and I and the camera people are up at a graveyard, and these guys are down in cabin 1 and cabin 2, but they're in cabin 1, which they set up as a operations place. So this thing comes out of the woods and looks at them. I said it looked like maybe a Bigfoot. Then it morphs down, and this is the part now it's a static cam, so it doesn't catch this coming out of here. Okay, but now when it gets, and there's a gravel road, maybe about 15 feet wide, if it's that wide, um, and it morphs down into a gnome looking deal with a humpback and just kind of drawn up and looking over its shoulder. And it drags its foot. It's just making its way across the road. And then when it gets to the edge of the road, to where it can go up this little, just, maybe a 10-foot trail, and then hit the steps and go up into the cabin, it morphs into a shadow person, and then walks up the steps to landing, up another set of steps to landing, and then walks through the door. And I'm not talking about knocking on the door and opening, brother. I'm talking about walk through the door. So that happened here in Harlan as well.
It's amazing. Now, while this was happening, and the standard question is, how did you feel? But when I ask, how did you feel? I mean, and I'm not talking about your feelings. I'm
Hmm.
talking about feelings. I'm talking about physically.
There was a lot of
Yeah.
interference with the equipment,
Mm.
because we called down to the operation post, and I key up, hey, because we're using a thermal, and this guy helps figure out how to record with us the thermal, and um, so I say it's glitching, it's doing all this crazy stuff, and we're up, trying to up in the graveyard shooting with that, and they go, hey, we'll have to get back to you. Something just happened. Something just happened. We'll have to get back to you. And these guys have seen, I mean, the cast and the crew and all those guys they've seen a lot of things. They're legit investigators. And for them to get excited like that, something's going on. And so we found out later what happens, and then or what had happened, and then also I caught, and I wish I'd sent you that vid. Um, the So I'm shooting with a thermal, and I don't remember if it was that time or another time I think it was another time we were investigating. So I'm standing in front of this pond, and the pond's maybe 6 foot away from me, but you got about 2 feet, and then it slopes down to the water. So I'm shooting with a thermal. And now there were some things interesting, and I'll backtrack in a second to some of the other things that we saw. But and I get a flash of light. Well, that doesn't, I mean, it could be anything. So I'm not like all torqued up about it. And so it goes on. I mean, this footage lays for a month, maybe more. And I'm going to go in and do something with it. I'm actually going to delete a bunch of it to save space, on my drives. And my girlfriend Jenny, she says, "Well, you might want to go through that one more time." I go, "Well, another hour of my life lost here," and so I start going through it, and there's this, I catch this flash of light, and I said, I'll slow it down just for craps and giggles. I slow it down, and there's this form that walks in front of me like that. You see the arm swing, you see, and it was different colors. Now I compared the colors to the different spectrums, and it's electromagnetic spectrum. Imagine that.
With that
So
evidence, I'm sorry I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're going through this footage at home,
yes.
and you caught something on there.
Hmm.
Does anything else happen in wherever it is you're at, a studio or you're at home, anywhere else, when you replay in this footage? And I hate to use this word, does it conjure up anything else, or is there any activity after you play these videos over and over?
You'll get activity sometimes in your house, but it's not usually, it's something that's followed you home or something like that. But now, when we deal with shadow people, yes, shadow people seem to, they'll mess with your cameras. You'll film stuff and know that you filmed it and know you didn't erase it, and it's gone. You can't find it. And they are probably the most powerful type entity that I've encountered. Um, the I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff, but now these are, uh, what they say about shadow people is most of them don't like the human race. If they were here and we displaced them, you hear all sorts of theories on it. But I can tell you that when you're dealing with shadow people, if you do not have a strong mind, um, bad things can happen. I mean, they can. Some people will say that sleep paralysis is just a natural event.
Mm-mm.
Nah,
No.
oh, it's poopy. And they'll do this, they'll do this. Man, they put off some funky energy, and they love playing. I mean, they love messing with you. But those, could they be elementals? Could they be this? Could be that? I don't know. But an extraordinary amount, especially in the last 5 years, of shadow people reports. Everything from the sleep paralysis to them trying to drive. We had done an investigation in a place not too far from here called Kaywood, Kentucky, and a lady had went insane in the home because of shadow people. Then this other couple moved in, and they started seeing crazy stuff, and they stayed there a bit and then moved out. So I think you may that's the clip that you have. That's from that house where the lady went insane.
Right. And I'm glad you mentioned that clip. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that. If you'd like to narrate through it, that's great. And I think that we got something here. So I'm gonna go ahead and play that. And you go ahead and take it away, brother.
All right, this is security cam footage from the homeowners. They had called, and or a friend of mine had called. They're related to him, and he told me that they were having this issues in their home, and they were having this issues with shadow people. And I'm going, well, you know, they said they caught it on security cam, and I said, well, send it to me. I'm thinking we could probably debunk it. There's no debunking this. This lady, her husband left her, and she ended up going insane. And her daughter had to come and get her and took her to get her what help she could. But if you look, the thing is trying to manifest up, and when it finally pops up, you'll see it walk around the room. There, you see it to the right?
Yes.
Okay. And if you slow it down even more, you see the arm swinging, and whenever it comes up out of the and this place is built over top of a well, and around old mines, and guess what the geology is? Limestone quartz. So, and it's a lot of magnetic anomaly, high magnetic anomaly place as well. So we investigated it. We brought in Holly. We brought in some other people. I mean, it's the real deal. It's the real deal because it followed them. Not only the people in here that live there had the experiences, but everybody on that street has some sort of paranormal story to tell you.
And that makes sense since they're had that underground right there. That energy's being drawn, or
There
it's
we go.
something's coming out of there. And that, in my opinion, didn't look like normal shadows.
No, because that was at around 1 o'clock, 1 p.m. of the day. And right behind where that camera, see that? What it is, they have had trouble with people afraid somebody was going to break in. And the people didn't ask to be on film. They didn't ask for money. They didn't ask for this. They didn't, just try to help us figure out what this is. So, when they moved, it went with them, and it started really getting violent. I mean, it was violent kind of there. It would rattle doors. They would be trying to sleep, rattle the doors, pound on the doors. It's just a lot of activity. And then whenever they moved, it followed them. And they had a lot of activity, and they, they're having after they moved a second or third time into the house they own now, there wasn't near as much. But I spoke to one of the homeowners about a month or so ago, and they're having an uptick in activity. So we're going to go back.
Well, you be careful when you go back there, and
Oh yeah,
because I mean you don't know what it is. One would assume if you're just being woken up from a dream that there's a break-in coming in. I've had experience like that myself, and by the time you figure out it's not a person, having your firearm on you doesn't really gonna do you a whole lot of good. It might cause more harm than you think in case somebody pops up's a person and you kind of just, sorry, I kind of winged my brother or my wife a little bit with a 9. Sorry about that.
right.
But yeah, you gotta be very careful. But it's gonna be a very weird segue into it because you're talking about crazy people. You're thinking about people breaking in. You're thinking about it might get robbed, it might get murdered. And there's certainly a lot of history in different states. We talk about also in Kentucky,
Right.
which brings me to something very interesting. I showed a friend of mine the cover of this book, Manzo Shepherd story, and I know that's the weirdest segue ever, but I did not want to end this show without talking about this.
Manzo Shepherd. My only fan I have, my mother is leaving the room now. She likes to hang out during the podcast. See, see, Mom.
Bye, Mom.
But well, she waves back. Okay, great sense of humor. Manzo Shepherd story. That is a history. We do a lot of history as well, a lot of history, and a friend of mine had told me about Manzo Shepherd years ago, and I worked in the courthouse where that Manzo was murdered. And actually, my office was, you have the old courtroom, then you have my office in the back of it. So when I come out of my office, I was in the old courtroom, and so he tells me this big story, and he gets two things right. He gets Manzo Shepherd's name right and where he was murdered right. Everything else had become folk, lore, and it wasn't anywhere close. So I become very interested in this story, and so I was trying to get everything I could from the archives, get newspaper articles, and started putting it together. Started doing paranormal investigations. We have several EVPs from Manzo, and Manzo knows who shot him. And so, uh, but the how it went down, I won't get ahead of myself, but they killed a taxi cab driver on Black Mountain, which is the tallest peak in Kentucky, in April of 1942. And they, long story short, they evaded capture for a little bit, and then they got pulled in for questioning. And they were horrible criminals, horrible criminals. Whenever the sheriff pulled them in for questioning, because they were the last ones to see him, there was Manzo Shepherd, Howard Hensley, and Sherman Klaus. They leave, go about a block, and steal a car. Well, instead of going out west or someplace, and there's not a lot of ways to identify somebody back then. So you could say, I'm Tom Jones, I'm Bob the Builder, I'm whomever. And they would have said, okay, Um, and so they steal the car, go get their girlfriends, go by the bootlegger, get a bunch of liquor, and go to Virginia. Yeah. And then they get caught and they get extradited back to Harlan County. They have two trials. First trial's May 19th, 1942, ends in a mistrial. Second trial is May 21st, 1942. And toward the end of the trial, the gentleman, Mr. Christian, his sister, who is a Heaton, she broke down and started uh, wailing, and she's thinking this guy that they killed Mr. Christian in a very brutal way. He tried to fight them. He knocked Manzo on his bottom. Manzo was a little guy, but he was fantasizing about being a big time criminal, and he just was a punk, really. And so the guys hold him. He grabs him by the back of the head, flips a straight razor out, cuts him from here to here, almost decapitating him. And then they take him across the Virginia border, which is only about 150 yards, and throw him over the mountain. So they think he's
Wow.
going to roll a long ways and never be found. Well, he rolls about 75 feet, and then he hangs up on a bush. And if it hadn't been for that, he might not have ever been found. Because really steep, really, really steep there. And so she starts crying. Let's go back to the trial. She starts crying and wailing. Manzo turns around, according to the paper, turns around and smiles and kind of smirks and giggles at her, because he's putting on this persona, to the very end. Well, when he does that, the nephew of the guy that they murdered, Jack Heaton, he steps up behind Manzo and fires a single shot in the back of his skull with a 32 caliber pistol. It goes through, traverses all the way through the skull and comes out right here, but it doesn't exit. It just makes a knot there, and he drops over dead. Well, the judge, once he restores order, sends. But I'll give a little bit more detail in that one. as the shots fired, everybody panics and goes toward the doors because it is Harlan County, and they thought they were going to be two factions shooting it out. Now, how he got the gun in there is they were patting the males down, and back then, they're not going to pat a female down. So his cousin, Jack's female cousin, had slipped a pistol in the folds of her dress, and sometime through the trial, had slipped it to him. And so there was also a young man there named Stanley Hensley that was trampled. He's 7 years old, and Stanley comes into the story a little afterwards. And they get him up, pick him up, reunite him with his mother. Stanley is the son of Howard Hensley, one of the murderers. He's there watching the trial with his mother and his little sister. So, anyways, the judge said, orders him to render a verdict. Manzo's not dead yet. We're sending him to the hospital. Well, the hospital's about 4 or 5 blocks away, so he's dead. He just wanted to give the family some closure. So they send him over. They render a verdict. It was like 10 minutes. They deliberated or less. Come out. We find him guilty, and we recommend death by electrocution. Judge says, slaps his gavel down, says, good enough for me. Call and see about Shepard. Well, they're waiting for this call. He's not been dead 2 minutes, Judge. We were about to call you. And he was dead when he left the courtroom, but that allowed him to pass judgment on a dead man. Now, let's fast forward. The other 2 guys got life in prison, and they ended up getting out on parole. Let's fast forward 9 months, and Jack Heaton stands trial. And, he says, yeah, I shot him. I went crazy. I seen black. He did this. He laughed at my mother, my uncles. He murdered my uncle. I shot him. I did it. Well, they find him innocent by temporary insanity because of temporary insanity. And a judge slaps the gavel down, and he gets to he leaves. Well, sometimes you think it's mountain justice, right? Sometimes maybe you turn something loose on society worse than what he killed. 9 months later in Boston, Jack Heaton murders again. He murders his wife in a hotel room. She's nude. She has very little hair left where he's pulled all of her hair out while she was alive. And he had beaten her to death with a heavy, it was either stiletto or it was one of the ones with a big, heavy heel on it. He beat her to death with that. So he leaves, he runs. He ends up in New Orleans. He turns himself in, I believe, and to the FBI down there, and they extradite him back to Boston. Jack Heaton stands trial, gives the same defense, gets 18 months.
That's awful.
Yes. And I think Jack Heaton was a serial killer of some sort. He was as bad or worse than Manzo. And he dies in Los Angeles, California in 1982. Now, I get a call a message from this lady. It says, hey, Dad would like to talk to you. He was in the courtroom when Manzo was murdered. And his name was Stanley Hensley. And they were filling me out, see if I was, this, that, and that. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, I'd love to talk to him. There's maybe some blanks he can fill in. He was a little boy that was trampled that was sitting there. And I just spoke to his son just maybe a month ago, and Stanley's still alive. He's 90, right at 90. So she's filling me out. And she's telling me some of the story, and it's a really good story. Stanley's mom is, they throw them out of the coal camp. Now, back in the day, whenever a miner got killed in a coal camp, if there wasn't a son old enough to go into the mines to take the dad's place, or she didn't marry a single coal miner, then they had very little time. They would just go in and get their stuff and take them. If they were lucky, they got a ride to town. Most of the time, they just went to the edge of the property line. And they set them out. That's for real. But people really don't get the true history of Appalachia. You know, they really they're pretty brutal here. And so she ends up going to a job fair. The war's on, and or coming up, and she's Goodyear, a representative from Goodyear, is there. That and was it not Toledo? Where was the big Goodyear plant? I have it in my notes in Ohio. She moved to Ohio to a big Goodyear plant, Akron. Does that sound right? Um, and becomes a Rosie the Riveter. I actually have photos of her in her Rosie the Riveter outfit. Now, this lady's telling me all this, and she says, "Well, now for an interim, she went and lived with her father-in-law for a little while until she could find a place, for of her own for the kids, her and the kids." And I said, "Oh, what's this name?" Well, I said, "I have my grandmother from up Smith," and she says, "William Henry Hensley." Well, my grandmother's maiden name was Hensley. And I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "Ma'am," I said, "the William Henry that had the store and had this?" And she said, "Oh, yeah. How do you know?" I said, "It was my grandmother's dad." And so she thinks I'm full of, you know what, just,
Mm.
you know. And she says, well, honey, what was your grandmother's name?" I said, "Elvie." She says, a big long pause on the phone. She says, "I have a photo of your grandmother holding my dad when he was 3 years old." And
Wow.
yeah, right. Um, so um, they end up, so that made one of the murderers my great uncle. Is that not creepy? Yeah. I tell
Yeah,
my
of course.
girlfriend, I'm like, "Yeah, baby." I said, guess what? Found this out, And that's my great uncle. And she's used to all this stuff, all the paranormal, all this
Yeah.
true crime stuff. She just looks up. She goes, "Oh, really? Well, honey, that explains a lot." And just goes back to doing what she was doing. I'm like, wait a minute. So Stanley ends up um, coming in and visiting us, and we get to interview Stanley. And I actually finished up the Manzo story with it's on. I don't know if it's on TikTok. It probably is, but TikTok or YouTube. It's called The Real Heroes. Um, and Stanley, they put Stanley in a Presbyterian school, and he stays there, and he grows up, and he graduates, and then he joins the army, and then he gets married, and then he goes to college, and then he ends up working for the same Goodyear plant that his mother did. Now, the reason I call them the true heroes is the lady left with virtually nothing in her pocket, uh, trying to get to make a better life for her and the children. So she wasn't going to stay here with that stigma hanging over them their whole lives. And and then Stanley could have went either way. He could have been bitter at the world. His mom's left him at this Presbyterian place, and blah 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 blah. And instead, he turns out to be this stellar human being that accomplishes so much positivity in his life. His family, his kids, and I would say his grandkids. I've just met his daughter and some of their people are absolutely some of the finest folks you will ever want to meet. And to me, for them overcoming that, especially seeing that at 7 years old, man, seeing a dude shot in the back of the skull 15 feet from you, it's got to be kind of traumatic. And So that's the reason I call them the real heroes. I didn't want to give Shepherd and Heaton. I didn't want to glorify them.
Sure.
You know, they were both. I document stuff. And I'm not a historian, but I love history. Sometimes people throw around historian a little loosely. You got to be really on your game to be a true historian. But I'm a historical enthusiast that really loves history. That's my first love, is history and mythology and things like that. But that's the reason that I call them the real heroes. They overcame the most, as far as I'm concerned. Shepherd and Heaton are just murderers. And if I was going to roll the dice, I would say that Heaton was just as bad or worse than Shepherd.
So the story has a little bit of a bright light to it towards the end.
Yes.
Which is even better, because sometimes it's not always like that. And now with your books, your research, and also your films,
Mhm.
for the listeners of Let's Find Out that want to know more about you and what films are coming out next, or books, what are you working on, and where are you going to release them?
The Bigfoot thing, the next is probably to come out next. Darla and I is planning on writing another book here in the next few months. We're toying with either true crime. We don't know whether to go true crime or paranormal, but a little bit back to the Manzo Shepherd story. Nobody would, which I can. I'm a lot better writer now than I was, 6-8 years ago. Nobody wanted to write the Manzo Shepherd story. They said it wouldn't be this. Nobody would be interested. And it's actually done fairly well. Darla, and I've known Darla for years, very talented author, and researcher in her own right, great investigator. She took it up for me. She says, "I'll help you," and wrote the book. She is the one that really deserves a lot of credit as well for bringing the Manzo Shepherd story to life. And how Darla and I work things is I'll go out, I'll gather up the stories, I'll get the people, I interview the people. Not that she can't, she's really busy, but she's a very successful business person. But it just seems to work this way. She loves to write, and I love to talk. So I'll go out and and find these folks and track down these stories and things like that. And so she will write these stories, but based a lot on the interviews that I get, and is her knowledge as well. But she is the one that actually brought Manzo Shepherd's story to life.
Well, and I know that the listener of Let's Find Out will definitely want to download or get a physical copy of the book itself.
Amazon,
as well.
Books A Million. We're at Amazon, Books A Million. If you want to watch our movies, we're on Tubi, Amazon, several other streaming services.
Awesome. And I know that in your area and also Appalachia, there's so many stories, and the stories are still happening today. I'd love to bring you back later on this year, because I know that
Sure.
you're going to have boots on the ground doing with the research. Come on back, tell us the stories, what it is that you saw, and I'll get you on the schedule, brother.
That sounds great. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, my friend.
Embrace the spirit of adventure as you join us on this daring journey through the untamed wilderness of Diego the Podcaster's Bonus Overdrive Wednesday. Real people, real stories, really on Wednesday. Available now on YouTube Music.
Copyright Diego the Podcaster. All content for Let's Find Out is the property of Diego the Podcaster and is served directly from our servers with no modification, redirects, or rehosting. All celebrity impersonators are paid performers. The impersonated celebrities do not endorse or promote any views or opinions expressed by our guests, Diego the Podcaster, or Let's Find Out. The information shared on Let's Find Out with Diego is provided on an as-is basis, with no guarantees of completeness, accuracy, usefulness, or timeliness.